Hi, it's Lee and welcome to the Tesla Economist. Tesla have requested approval for the second phase of Giga Berlin. If you recall, Tesla was initially granted a capacity of 500,000 vehicles a year from Giga Berlin from the Model Y factory. Now, although the current run rate is still only around half that, and the actual capacity is about 50% higher than 500,000, Tesla have now requested a million a year capacity. As you recall, the first approval process for Giga Berlin was no walk in the park, with Germany being notorious for red tape and Tesla going ahead with the build without even guaranteed approval. Eventually it worked out, despite many complaints about items like the lack of water in the area. In this latest report, we're hearing that Tesla is in the public consultation stage for Phase 2. It has in the past been indicated that there'll be 4 phases in Giga Berlin, somewhat inferred as 3 vehicle factories and 1 battery factory. And this plan is going back well over 3 years now. As we know, that future plans do not always pan out, and the industry doesn't always go in the direction we expect. Things change, and Tesla reevaluates. They look at the chessboard and see what best moves they have with the pieces available. In other words, we don't really know what this Phase 2 is going to be, but we can always speculate. For starters, we pretty much know it is expected to be an additional 500,000 vehicles a year. Now, given that Tesla isn't close to global Model Y capacity yet, and the fact that Texas and Berlin have more than an additional 500,000 units a year still remaining there, I'm going to assume that this expansion will not be for additional Model Y units. If there were more Model Y units, then Tesla would also need to find more demand, which is another way of saying they would have to reduce prices, which means reducing margins, and at this stage, it's really going to start to affect profits. Even if it was what I would say the best case scenario with a new mid-range Model Y using CATL's new M3P cells, perhaps with around 270 miles of range and rear-wheel drive and low cost, I think it would still be too big a push. And like I said, there's still over 500,000 units remaining at the current factories for when the 4680 cells finally ramp. Therefore, I'm ruling out any further Model Y expansion. A popular opinion has been that this is a Model 3 factory. We have a Model 3 factory in the US and China, yet not one in Europe. It is still a good selling car and sells well in Europe. Obviously, this would be a Model 3 Highland custom-built factory. A facelift that is sounding like a bigger refresh as we get more updates, potentially using castings now and structural battery packs. The result would be a lower cost Model 3 that is indeed a better vehicle and a more modern look and feel. But bear in mind, Tesla only make around 550 to 600,000 Model 3s a year now. If this expansion was for 500,000 Model 3s, it would essentially double the global production of Model 3s. I find it unlikely that Tesla could double demand for Model 3 whilst maintaining margins. I mean, perhaps there'd be enough demand if Tesla solved FSD or something, but even if they did, I think Tesla would do better making more quantities of a smaller vehicle. Which brings us to the potential most likely vehicle Tesla are going to be making. Now, why would Tesla want to make a vehicle like the Model 3 or Model Y when they have evolved their manufacturing techniques already to Gen 3? Tesla's not the kind of company to look in the rearview mirror. They're forward-looking. For starters, the objective for vehicle production is to get as many Teslas out on the road as possible. Kind of like the printer industry. Sell the printers really cheap and make all the money on ink. Get as many Tesla cars out on the road and make money from FSD subscriptions. This is the real business model for Tesla Autos. This is where the big money lies, and the whole Tesla stock price to $3,000 possibility. Or perhaps that will also require robotaxis, but that's somewhat related anyway. This would be my bet, and if we look at the constraining factor for EVs, then it's going to come down to cells and batteries. Tesla will be resorting to LFP cells, or some hybrid version at least. Like I said, Tesla are looking forward. They need to scale. There's no other cell in the world yet that can scale as fast. Therefore, whatever is being built in this factory will most likely have to use these cells, implying smaller batteries and lower range, and or a smaller vehicle. I have no idea why Tesla wouldn't want to build a Gen 3 factory here if they are able to make EVs at half the cost of a Model 3. That statement alone should be enough evidence as to this being a Gen 3 factory. Then you might ask, why only 500,000 vehicles? That's not very many. We want millions of Gen 3 vehicles a year. Elon even saying about 5 million a year of the 2 new models, presumed to be a compact and a van. Compacts are the best-selling vehicle type in Europe. If Giga Mexico is looking at a capacity of 1 or 2 million a year, then surely Europe should be around similar numbers. Well, I think that Tesla are applying for capacity of vehicles at this stage, rather than a certain factory size, as in they'll have permission to produce a further 500,000 vehicles a year for now, and eventually, when they ramp up the factory and improve the processes, I'm assuming they could eventually apply for permission for more, possibly indeed closer to 1 million a year. On top of that, how I always like to stress is that EVs are still cell constrained. Where would Tesla get enough cells from to build another 1 million vehicles a year? Or even 500,000 for that matter? Well, remember, CATL are also building a new European LFP factory in Hungary with a supposed 100 gigawatt hour a year capacity. Although this factory is also earmarked for some legacy autos like BMW too, so Tesla won't be able to get all the supply. However, for a Gen 3 compact at 500,000 units a year, Tesla would only need about 25 gigawatt hours a year of cells. This is not a huge number. So perhaps there is plenty of supply there if Tesla want to expand, and CATL could also expand. If the remaining 75 gigawatt hours a year or so was for legacy, then that would mean around 1 million cars a year for them. I'm not sure Legacy are ready to make that many electric cars, especially if they're losing $10,000 to $20,000 per car. In other words, it's going to be something like a $10 billion a year loss for Legacy to take on the rest of that factory. So perhaps Tesla has more plans for that factory. Perhaps Tesla will also start a Megapack factory in Europe as well, which sounds like a good move given that energy is that much more expensive there. It would imply a good return on investment. And if you include the 2 other Megapack factories, then that would eventually be some serious income in for Tesla Energy, perhaps $15 to $20 billion a year in gross profit a year just from energy, a serious foundation. Of course, we know this Phase 2 factory is not for Megapacks as it talks about the 500,000 vehicle capacity. Elon said they would announce a new factory this year, but I think that was implied as a new location. This is obviously not a new location and merely an extension. So we could get this expansion, Mexico, and a new location mentioned later this year. All of that is starting to make Tesla look like a really big company. It does also say that Berlin will go from a 50 gigawatt hour a year battery production facility to 100 gigawatt hours a year. Now, this is not necessarily cell production, but perhaps actual batteries that are being made on site from importing cells, although there was meant to be a 50 gigawatt hour a year 4680 factory there too, but obviously there's not much happening there yet. 100 gigawatt hours a year of batteries is far more than enough for 1 million vehicles there, so not sure what the plans may be, but we're talking about big numbers. Anyway, this is kind of a big deal, seeing Berlin doubling capacity, and hopefully more Gen 3 expansion. The factory will not be operational until 2025 sometime, I'd say, but it's still going to be another step closer to Tesla hitting around 5 million a year capacity around 2025 or 2026, which really will level up the EV business. Hi there, I'm using Verbalate AI video translation and lip sync software. It's pretty amazing. Watch this. I can translate my videos into other languages. For example, I am now speaking Hindi.
नमस्ते, मैं पहली बार हिंदी में बोल रहा हूं, लेकिन वर्बलेट इसे इतना आसान बना देता है.
Or how about Spanish?
Hola, vaya, increíble.
También puedo hablar español. Sign up at verbalate.ai today to gain early access to trial the product for creators and strategic partners, and gain the ability to translate and lip sync videos in all major languages. You can view the info in the description below.